So you guys dated for 4 years?
4.5 years before we got married. Well, he was young. You do know that I robbed the cradle, like, major. This is actually a scandalous story. Do you want me to tell this one?
Oh, definitely. Wait.
I'm just kidding. It's not scandalous. Can I just say it's not scandalous?
Wait.
Welcome, everyone, to the Palm Valley Church Podcast, where we invite God into everyday conversations. My name is Mark Rohaki, and today we have a great conversation with Adrienne Nunez. And so it was fantastic to be able to talk with her and just see a little bit of her life and how it started out and how her and Ryan came into ministry. So enjoy, everyone. So there is like a scandalous story about the two of you? I mean,
yes.
starting.
So well, actually, it wasn't very scandalous. So I moved out of my house 2 weeks after I graduated from high school because I just wanted to be on my own.
Yeah.
And I got this really awesome gig where I acted kind of as this guardian for this high school girl.
Really?
Yes. And, well, I say guardian because her dad was like a truck driver.
Okay.
And he was only home like 1 weekend in the whole month.
Yeah.
So he needed someone to live with her. And it's kind of a sad story because her aunt had actually held that role before. She kind of acted as her kind of guardian, but she committed suicide actually.
Oh, wow.
So he was really, there was a lot of grief going on and he didn't know what to do. He was kind of panicked. He needed someone who was responsible. Don't ask me why.
And as an 18-year-old, you're very responsible.
18-year-old, you know, I was really responsible. Yeah. And I actually was a really responsible 18-year-old. Give me some credit here. So I was really responsible. But so he interviewed me, and I had known her through school. She was a freshman in high school, and I had just graduated, but I knew her. And so I moved in, and so...
You actually moved into her house?
Yeah, moved into her house.
Wow.
I actually handled all his bills and all of his financial dealings and his banking while he was out of town. Paid everything and did the grocery shopping, took care of her, signed all her permission slips, and made sure she didn't rob a bank.
Right,
pretty
that's
much,
good.
yeah. So I did that, and then... ironically, this is the funny thing, her boyfriend was a little bit older than her and was like a year behind me in school.
Sure.
And he knew Ryan, was friends with Ryan.
Okay.
And so kind of through the grapevine, I met Ryan that way, and Ryan was younger than me by 2 years, or in school by 2 years.
Yeah.
And he was really smart. He's always been super smart.
So this isn't a recent development. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and funny. I mean, it's funny. He's always really quiet in social situations unless he knows people or if he's hosting or if he's in kind of a capacity where he's kind of running the show. He's pretty reserved and quiet, but we just started talking and...
So through this mutual friend, you started talking?
And it was funny because he was younger than me, and I worked at an engineering company my freshman year of college, and because I was a freshman in college at this point.
Okay.
And he was a junior in high school.
Oh, wow.
So it was very scandalous. I could have been arrested. No, I couldn't have been arrested. But I mean, anyway, so there was kind of some, doesn't matter now, obviously.
Right.
But...
like, what did your family and friends think? You're in college and he's in high school.
My mom actually was fine with it, but she just thought... Yeah, this isn't going to really last. This is going to be like this passing phase. But he was different than other guys I had dated.
Okay.
And I wasn't a Christian at the time.
Right. I know. This is crazy. This is a great part of your story, though.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like? When did he let you know right away, hey, I'm a Christian. This is my life?
It's not like he said that. He just invited me to church.
Okay.
And this is before we really started dating.
Sure.
So he... invited me to church, and this is funny because when I met him, I'm like, you go to church every weekend?
Right. Yeah.
I go like on maybe Christmas every third year.
Right.
When I'm invited. But it was weird to me because I thought, well, that's one of your days off. Why would you go to church? Seriously, this is because I grew up in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And my parents divorced when I was young, and we weren't regular attenders when I was young.
Sure.
So, but I always believed in God. It wasn't like I didn't believe in God, but that was... it wasn't a regular part of our life.
Yeah.
And I moved around a lot when I was a kid.
Okay.
I went to 14 different schools by the time I had graduated from high school.
Wow.
So it was just kind of weird. And so when I met him and he had this like kind of this I don't know. His story isn't a fairy tale story either, but to me, I was like, you go to church every weekend, and so I went with him. This is a long story short.
Sure.
We went, and I actually the very first weekend I went, they presented the gospel, and I prayed, and I went up to the altar call. I will tell you a funny story. So when you go to a Catholic church, you typically, there's holy water and you know, cross yourself and you go up and you kneel before you go into the pew. I actually knelt before I went into the, like, it wasn't even pews. They were like lined up chairs. And I was like, it was like really awkward. And
you were the only one that did it that day at that church.
Like, what are you doing? He like looked at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, sorry. I did that wrong. Like, I didn't know. And I was like, but then it was so clear, such a clear message for me. And so I remember Kathy Paps took me back into a prayer room afterwards. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never heard the gospel presented that clearly. And I was like, this is so simple. So simple. Why wouldn't you do that? So,
and you're not dating at this time, right? Ryan just invited you.
No, he just invited me. I went to church, and then that night, he invited me over to, it was Sunday, and his mom always had people over after church every Sunday. We had, you know, pot roast or something that she made every Sunday, and it was amazing. And then Greg and Lori come over.
Oh, wow.
And knock on the door. Because they're going to lead me to Christ. They didn't know that I had already prayed that morning, and I was excited. But so Greg sits down and he's telling me this story. You know, he's like going through the entire like evangelism explosion presentation. I don't know if you're familiar with that, EE. But he like presents the whole gospel to me, and I'm like, yes. I'm like, oh, maybe I have to do it officially again. I didn't know, you know, so I'm like, yes. And so Lori's like hitting him like, you need to just, she says, yes, let's just pray, you know? So anyway, that just kind of started the thing. And so then we started dating, and
so literally
a long time.
He invites you to church, you accept Christ. You then have dinner with his family that evening. Like this is all like within like the first kind of real moments of hanging out with Ryan.
The first few weeks. And we used to do this really immature thing when we were young. When I was first in college.
None of us do immature
so things. This is before. You got to understand, this is in 1995. So social interactions way different. Electronics and are way different. So what we used to do is we used to dress up in camouflage and like paint our faces and go out in the middle of the desert with like water guns and like play war. Like seriously, we did that just for fun.
Like you and Ryan did?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had a group that had done it, and I had done it before he had done it. And then we, because of the mutual friends we had, ended up going to do that. Because it wasn't like we had any money, so laser tag was out.
Right.
So that was our, ghetto laser tag. That's what we did.
Well, we haven't evolved much. Instead of water, it's just paint now.
It's just paint now. Yeah. So anyway, so that's what we did. And so we had hung out in those ways before, but we hadn't started dating. So we started dating. He was younger than me. And I had to tell you, when I first started dating Ryan, it wasn't because he was this, he had such an intelligent way of speaking, and like he was so smart, and he was funny, but he was really short when I started dating him. I mean, he's taller than me now, but he looked 12 years old, so it was a little bit weird, but he was so nice. I really liked him, and I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to go for the nice guy and see what he's got, Right. And it just kind of went from there, and we, 20 years later.
I say, how long did you guys date before you got married?
About 4.5 years.
Okay.
And we got married.
And you were in school this entire time while you were dating?
Yes. Okay. So I was at ASU, and
you went to school for what?
I went to school for nursing, so I have my bachelor's in nursing.
Okay.
And I went to school for 6 years because at first I thought I was going to do some kind of engineering or something like that. So I took a whole bunch of math. And then finally, a couple years into in college, I needed to decide what I was going to do because it's expensive. Not as expensive as it is now, but it was expensive. So I decided I was going to do nursing because, I'm a very logical person. That's the way I think. I'm like, oh, man, I can always get a job as a nurse. Forever. Doesn't matter. So I did that. And I graduated in 6 years. And Ryan, of course, caught up to me. So we graduated the same year because he graduated in 4 years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So his undergraduate was in aeronautical engineering. And he also, throughout his undergraduate, worked at the same engineering company I did and worked kind of as a calc monkey on for a structural engineering firm that I worked in the administrative office for. Yeah. And so we worked at the same place all through college too. So that was kind of fun. And so he decided to go on to graduate school after he graduated. But a really fun fact is Brian actually wanted to be an airline pilot. And he spent a lot of money, I remember, because we were, putting out money. He spent a lot of money to go to flight school. And about halfway through his instrument rating, probably, he got a letter from the FAA saying because of his asthma, he couldn't fly commercially. Really? And this is a man who literally ran triathlons and marathons and stuff, and the FAA said he couldn't fly commercially. Yeah. So, that was just God closing that door.
I was going to say, like, God had a different plan. Yeah.
Right. So he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to work for Boeing or something. And so he went on to get his doctorate in material science. It was actually electron microscopy. Yeah. Is what his area of study is. But
you may be the only one that can actually like say all that and knows that. So.
Yeah, well, I did edit all of his dissertation, so
I
didn't. I could actually intelligently speak about it, but it's pretty boring, so I won't bore you.
Well, so what was life like? Like, what's your faith life like? That's a large phrase there. But during this time period, you just became a Christian.
Yep.
Just started dating this guy, and you guys get married, but you're both in school. And I mean, your degrees are real serious degrees, not to make fun of anybody else's degrees out there, right. But these are ones that are a little more difficult than the average person. And so you're brand new Christians in all this, brand newly married in this. So what does faith look like for you throughout this time period?
I was super excited about it. And so I don't know how, like, looking back on it now, I don't know if I could do it now, but like, we were so busy, but we always made time. So we took that EE class you were talking about, and we were like on fire. We were like going to be evangelists. We taught Sunday school. We taught a kindergarten Sunday school class with all these little kids, and we just served. And then we served in the youth, in the praise band. And so I taught myself drums, and so I was the drummer, and he was the guitar, vocals, and it was fun. Like we just served because that's what we wanted to do, and I was excited. So I was just learning as much as I could, and I was at ASU, so it's not like I was taking Bible classes. So I was just kind of, immersing myself in whatever I could learn at my church or, just from Bible studies with the women's group and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we were at. But we did get super busy. So towards the end of my major, I was taking these ridiculous clinical hours. Right. And so it got a little bit different, but we just got, we just made it work. We still were serving every weekend because that was a time that we could come together and be kind of this. But we had planned to get married 2 years before we ever got married. We got engaged 2 years before we got married. And we just had this plan. And then close to the time that we had graduated, or actually before we graduated, right before we got married, Greg and Lori had asked us to come plant Palm Valley with them. Yeah. And
what was that like? I mean, you both have these degrees. You both are very highly intellectual people. You've got these plans in life, but you're also starting to feel this tug from God of you're serving, you're enjoying it, you're trying to learn everything. Yeah. And then, you're asked to start a church.
We were going to do it all, just so you know. We're like, okay, well, I'm going to be a nurse. You're going to be this materials engineer or whatever.
Oh, so you planned on doing both?
We were going to do both. And he was going to be a lay pastor, and he was for a couple of years. Yeah. Even here, he took over the youth when we first planted. Church plants don't have any money to pay anyone, so we just all maxed out our credit cards, and we just were he was the youth pastor, and we worked, and so we were bivocational, and we just did that. And had fun doing it. And then he's in graduate school too. So I'm working as a nurse. We're serving, he's a youth pastor. Yeah. He's also working as he's on campus, and he has an on-campus job as like a research assistant, or he's teaching a class, like a lab for his major. And he's going to graduate school and working on his dissertation all at the same time. And so I'm kind of the breadwinner. He's doing that. And he's, youth pastoring for, as a lay pastor. And then he starts feeling the tug to be a pastor. Yeah. And, I was working at St. Joseph's Hospital early on, and then I moved into hospice after that. And he comes to me and he says, Adrian, he's all, I think God's calling me to be into full-time ministry. Oh, wow. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
What does that mean for
Right.
us? What are you talking about? Because at this point, he literally, I think, had one more year of his doctoral program
Okay.
that we
right.
had spent some money on.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
exactly.
say.
Yeah.
But he's like, but I really feel like God's calling me to this instead of this science field that I've been, going to school for,
Yeah.
my whole life for.
Right.
And I thought, well, if God's calling you, you
Yeah.
need to do it.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, and I just really felt this so strongly on my heart that I would rather him do what God called him and be so happy doing ministry
Yeah.
than to do something in industry and being overworked probably.
Right.
And come home and feel like, what if I
Right.
should have been doing
Should have been doing
this?
this. Yeah.
And I thought, well, then you need to do that.
Yeah.
I said, but you need to finish because you've got 1 year left. Just
Yeah.
finish your doctorate because it's important for you to finish things that you start. And so finish it and then do
Yeah.
whatever God calls you to do. And so he did that.
Yeah. So you challenged him to make sure he finished it rather than stopping right there at that point.
I mean, because at that point, I'm like, what if God calls you in a different direction or he's going to use
Yeah.
these experiences in your life for something in ministry? I don't know what that would look like, but I
Right.
just know that we needed to be finishers.
Right.
So finish
Right.
it. And then, so that's what he did. And I was, when he graduated with his doctorate, I was pregnant with Eric.
Okay.
Oh, no. I had Eric already. I'm trying to think. And was I pregnant with Isaac maybe?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
So you had your first kids that were involved in this, but when Ryan first comes to you with this, so talking about full-time ministry, was there any fear for you? Or for you, was there a sense of I agree? It seems like God's been kind of working on me the same way.
Well, I felt, so this is the way God always worked on me. Like I felt, okay, so I always have been like a go-getter, I needed to succeed in things.
Right.
So I graduated like second in my class in high school. I always was like top of everything.
Yeah.
It felt like,
Sure.
but for me, that's what I needed, right?
Yeah.
I needed to have all this recognition.
Sure.
God really was working on my heart that he was like stamping that down a little bit. Like, Adrian, you need to support your husband in this season. And I still am a pretty outspoken and driven person. And like Ryan knows my opinion always.
Sure.
But all of a sudden God like flipped a switch for me. Like I didn't need to be the one that was winning everything, that was at the top, that was accomplishing things, that was getting the award, that was, you know what I mean? Because that was the way I was living my life before I accepted Christ, actually, because I was trying to fill something that wasn't filled. But I felt like, God really just gave me this peace about, I am calling you to be a team player at this point, and whatever Ryan does, and every once in a while. So now, like the way this manifests now in ministry for me,
it's my next question. What does that look like?
I have been like a swing pusher, is what somebody labeled me as a couple of years ago. I think it was Bill Reeves, maybe. He goes, "You're a swing pusher. Like if there's low energy in something, I'll go and I'll push the swing.
Yeah.
And then I am okay leaving and letting them on their own power continue to make that swing." So I've done so many different things in the church, whether behind the scenes or like I love finding people's potential and what they're good at and plugging them in and seeing them succeed in something. And I don't need to be the one, I just don't feel that need anymore. And so,
it's a beautiful part about marriages then as well. I love how you say, I didn't need to be the one that necessarily got the accolades, but when Ryan does, it's a win for our family, and we get to celebrate it together. I had this conversation with my wife the other day. She got her doctorate, and to me, that was one of the most exciting moments in my life. Even though it had nothing to do with me, it was all about her. I was just like, no, we're married. We're in this together. This is exciting, and we celebrate this together, and it's as if we'd gone through this. So I love hearing that from you.
What's so great, he's never made me feel like, in fact, he's always like, come on, do more. And like, honestly, he's good at this stuff. Like, I would have never, though, picked Ryan to do this stuff because early on he hated to be the upfront guy, which is so funny. And now I'm the one I hate to be upfront, and he's upfront. And I'm like, it's just, I think it's just the way it's supposed to be. And I feel like God's blessed us through this. I feel like God reveals things to me that he wants me to be a part of or to support or to step in for a season and do things. But
what would you say God is working on you now in this current day of ministry?
That's a good question. And I think right now, had just come off of a really just hard season with Rosemary and stuff. And now I think it's kind of a season where he's just bringing me back to discovering what he wants me to do next. And I don't think I've discovered it yet, honestly. So I'm just been spending some time like in the Word and just like going through, and actually some of the verses that jump out at me are very evangelistic. And so for me, I'm like, maybe because I've been in this place where I've been caring for people that have been close to us in our family, now it's time for me to kind of branch out, because I am kind of an introvert. I'm a functioning introvert. So like I can fake it really good and people will think that that's not who I am. But like I am much happier just like being in a conversation with one person in a corner for the entire night than working in an entire room. Right. And I think God's kind of challenging me in that he wants me to start branching out again and start building more relationships, even if it's out of my comfort zone a little bit. So
good. Well, Adrienne, I appreciate the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks.
Glad you could join us, that's for sure. We see the wife of the doctor, and everything that's gone on in your life. I love your story. I love everything that you, just kind of the journey that you've been on in your own life, and seeing how nursing has taken you in certain places, but then seeing how you and Ryan, you had a clear direction, and how God moved it in such a completely different place, and yet it's completely fulfilling. It's everything that you guys would have wanted and have hoped for. And so thank you for sharing that today.
Thanks
with
for
us
inviting
today.
me. It was fun.
Without a doubt. So we hope to have you back someday.
I'm sure.
So I'll try not to be, so last minute. Maybe I'll give you a little more of a heads up next time. But,
awesome. No, I love it. Anytime.
Cool. And we appreciate everyone else for joining us. And so we'll connect with you online or in person. So have a great rest of your week, everyone.